Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist. I am Melissa Blasek. I'm a former New Hampshire state representative and the current executive director and lobbyist for a grassroots liberty organization called Rebuild NH. I've been very, very busy today that I am recording. It is the final day, essentially, of the New Hampshire legislative season. It was quite a photo finish. I will get into a little bit of that. Because I want to detail a fight that I've actually been in since I started doing this 5 years ago, but that's actually been going on about 20 years. And we have finally reached the finish line. And I think that the saga of it has a lot of really good lessons for people who are interested in politics, in following legislation, and in activism. So all 50 states in America have vaccine mandates, except for now, Idaho actually just was the first state in the country to end their vaccine mandates for school attendance. But that was very recent. And before that, all 50 states have had them for decades and decades and decades. And in all 50 states, there's a difference between statute and rules. So I want to be clear about this. Both statute and rules have the full weight and color and enforceability of law. But rule making, is something that is done by bureaucrats who are unelected and unaccountable. And the legislative process or what makes statutes are done by legislators that you elect and are therefore accountable to voters. In all 50 states that have had vaccine mandates, the vaccines can be added. So you can mandate a new vaccine either through rulemaking or through statute. Some states, they've just adopted where it's like that the department, the bureaucrats just keep track of whatever the ACIP schedule is, and then they just mandate the entire ACIP schedule. That's how a lot of states operate, actually, is that the bureaucrats are the ones who just keep track of the ACIP schedule. A new one comes on the ACIP schedule, they just add it in as the requirement now. New Hampshire has been lucky a lot of this time that we have been very conservative with our vaccine requirements. We do not mandate the entire ACIP schedule. We haven't added a new vaccine for like 15, 20 years, something like that. Decades ago, there was a basic schedule of like essentially Tdap and MMR that were mandated into statute. And then when we added rulemaking power to it, which I believe when I traced it back, it was in the 80s, they have since added 3 more vaccines over time into rules. But again, whether it's in rules or whether it's in statute, I'm trying not to get too in the weeds here, but both things are mandates in the same exact way. When you go to sign up to go to school, you're not seeing, oh, well, some of these are mandates and rules, some of them are in statute. No, you're given one list of everything in rules and statute combined because those are the mandates, period, at the end. It's been a 20-year fight to end rulemaking over the vaccine schedule. And for years, what would happen is that we could never get it off the ground because the medical freedom activists refused to even entertain the idea that you could take the vaccines that are in rules and put them into statute and then end the vaccine rulemaking. And the politicians balked at the idea of ending rulemaking, which would also eliminate the 3 vaccines that are mandated in rules from the schedule. They didn't want to change the vaccine schedule at the same time as ending rulemaking. Now, for years and years, that wasn't even the main issue. You just couldn't get it off the ground. But since COVID really brought forth the full throttle power of the medical freedom movement. It awakened so many more people's eyes to the corruption of the medical establishment and made people realize, wow, we ceded the ground for liberty so dramatically when we simply blindly accepted rules, or I'm sorry, when we've blindly accepted school vaccine mandates decades and decades and decades ago. And maybe that wasn't a good thing. Maybe we should start thinking about how we could change that. That was really a post COVID phenomenon that it really gained traction even amongst the politicians. So I've only been involved since 2020. I am very, very, very deep in now. I mean, it's a sickness, honestly, you guys. But we have had now three bills that have been brought forward to end vaccine rulemaking. And in both instances, ultimately the politicians would say, maybe we'll get rid of the rulemaking, but we're not changing the vaccine schedule at the same time. So you either put those vaccines that are in rules in statute, or it's a no deal. And I was always willing to say that's a deal because it's the same mandates, the same schedule, but you have moved the ball forward. I want to be very clear. There is You're never, not never, but it's very rare that you get the perfect bill where you get every single thing that you ask for. Now, you should never accept if it's one step forward and one step backwards. That's a no go. You kill that. You don't accept that. But if it's a step forward and not a step backward, you accept that. Incrementalism is how we got to where we're at. And it's the only way you're going to get out of the bad stuff that you got into through incrementalism to begin with. Incrementalism is how you win. Saying, I liken this fight very much to pro life groups. There are certain pro life groups who tell legislators to vote against any type of vaccine, oh my goodness, any type of abortion restriction if there's even a single exception. Well, you're never going to get that. So they always lose. Like those organizations are worthless. It's the ones who accept that, okay, well, if you're at 24 weeks now, you're going to go to 15 weeks. Now you're going to go to 12 weeks. It's those orgs that actually move the ball forward and actually achieve their outcomes and their goals. If you expect the entire pie, you're not getting the entire pie all the time. That's not how politics work. Legislating and legislation is very difficult for a reason. It is difficult to build consensus to protect people. And so over the years, especially the left and the statists realized if they were going to get what they want, they had to do it in small bites. And guess what? They've largely won. So if you're going to get out of it, you have to do it, be willing to do it in small bites also. But I would end up in clashes over this particular bill because the medical freedom activists had it in their heads that having a vaccine mandate in rules was somehow less permanent than having it in statute. And literally, that's not true. It takes a bill, a piece of legislation to end either thing. They are exact and they are enforced as mandates in the exact same way. They are the exact same thing, no difference, hard stop. Both take a bill to change it. And their argument is always like, well, there's never been a state that's ever removed a vaccine requirement. Well, first of all, that's not true anymore because of Idaho, but let's take that aside. Well, that's an insane argument. There's been a lot of things that New Hampshire has done that no one else has done. We were the only state to reverse and forgive all COVID fines and charges. We if we were to end vaccine rulemaking, we'd be the only state to ever end vaccine rulemaking. We have been the first and only state to do quite a few things. So that's just a ridiculous argument. But I have been burned so badly by people on my own side. And what happens is when people on your own side start fighting, interfighting like that, the politicians just throw up their hands and like, we're done. So this time around, there is actually basically a medical freedom caucus within the Republican caucus in the House. All right. And I have been lucky enough that they respect my opinion. And I sort of help them narrow down their priorities. And ultimately, their top priority ended up being this bill to end vaccine rulemaking. Now, the way it was originally written was that it ended vaccine rulemaking, which also would have ended the 3 vaccines in rules. I really fought to get it through the House. That's where it originated in that same form. so that I would have something to negotiate with when we got to the Senate, because the Senate is the worst body for medical freedom in New Hampshire times a billion. But even that was very difficult. Like, it only happened and worked out correctly because there were some very strategic absences that just ended up being good luck in the House committee when it was time to vote on that bill. Otherwise, that wasn't going to pass, and we would have had to have moved those vaccines from rules into statute, even in the House. Okay. But things worked out there. We moved it over to the Senate. The Senate immediately kills the bill, and they don't want anything to do with it. I couldn't even get to them in time to be like, well, maybe we could negotiate. No, 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 no. But because there was this caucus in the House that had this as their priority, I started suggesting to them that they take this bill and add it onto other bills. So they added it onto another bill. And that bill ultimately ended up getting tabled in the Senate. But because it was like they had to do it so many times, um, it kept staying in everyone's cognizance as a huge priority that had to get done, because we just kept adding it onto bills and adding it onto bills. And one of the bills that we added it onto was the budget. Okay. Budget is the last bill that gets voted on at the end of the year. Today is the end of the year. And now the Senate killed everything that we attached this bill to or tabled it, except for the budget. Now, when they had their chance with the budget, they removed it from the budget, but it was still passed in the budget from the House priority, or as the House position. So when the House and the Senate went to committee of conference, which, if you don't know what committee of conference is, it's part of a legislative process where if there are two different versions of the same bill, one in each chamber, that means that representatives and senators have to go to a committee, like just a smattering of each, just a few of them, and they make their own committee to hash out the differences. Well, this caucus in the House made this their top priority, said we're not voting for the budget if this is not in there. Okay. And they had sort of made their wishes known. I did go in there and suggest, it's committee of conference time. I know you've said what you wanted before, but now is the time to really start hounding the committee and hounding House and Senate leadership. Please start calling House. I made a ton of calls, and you can do this as an activist. This is now inter-politician politics. I made calls to tons of reps and said, please call House and Senate leadership. Don't write them an email. Don't send them a letter. You are going to call them and tell them, this is your bottom line. This must be in there. And I believed actually that House leadership wanted to give them what they wanted. And I also was in constant communication with one particular rep who was on this committee of conference for the budget, who is a great, great, great ally of mine. And she wanted to push for it too, but she needed political muscle behind her. So I helped manufacture that political muscle. And this is something that I highly recommend doing. When a politician asks for your help, give them your help. So lots of calls went into House and Senate leadership saying this is their priority, this is their priority, this is their priority. And so therefore it gave this allied rep on the committee of conference the political muscle that she needed to get this passed. So she did, but in the process, she did have to negotiate away, saying, okay, fine, we'll put it in there, but these three vaccines will be added to statute, and they won't just be eliminated with rules when we eliminate rulemaking. Okay. Again, does not functionally change the schedule whatsoever, but it eliminates rulemaking so that right now, I mean, there's no backstop. The bureaucrats could add any vaccine they want, period, the end, and they would have no recourse from anybody, period. Um, so And to me, that's a fair trade. And I absolutely supported that. That's what she had to do. She tried to, have it not be like that, but this is what she ended up having to do. Fully supported it. And all the activists went berserk. I got called a baby murderer. I don't know how I'm a baby murderer because, again, vaccine requirements the same. I got told I had blood on my hands. Again, don't know how that's possible. Schedule is the same. And they really, really, really crucified this rep who had done all of the negotiation in this committee of conference on their behalf. Now, I have learned a big political lesson over the years that I want to share with you, because I feel like there are other sort of activist training organizations. And the one thing that they do not tell you is this: you have political allies who are legislators. Sometimes you may not have a lot of them, but you'll have some. They may not agree with you on every single issue 100%. If you want somebody who agrees with you 100% on every issue, you should go look in the mirror. But they are going to be willing to go off and fight for you on some particular issues. You can push your allies. You cannot push them into oncoming traffic. She got to the point where she told me, if the budget fails, and it was looking like it was going to fail because a lot of the legislators, even who had this was their priority, were very upset. Even I had to, we had to help kind of get them back on board. She said, I will not fight for this again if this budget fails and I have to go and fight for a second budget. I'm not fighting for it again. And you know what? I saw a lot of discussion amongst a lot of legislators who, again, 100% agree with us on medical freedom, who, after seeing how the activists treated their allies, we're not talking their enemies, their allies, by expecting them to go jump off a cliff for them politically, they said they will never sponsor a vaccine or medical freedom bill again because they don't want to be that person in that fire. They have better things to do with their time. So I think it's a very good lesson to learn. The budget just passed today by one vote, and the governor has already vowed to sign it. So New Hampshire will be the first state in the country to end vaccine rulemaking. So we won, but I just thought those were some interesting things. Hopefully it didn't get too into the weeds. We're going to have on David Reaboi, who is a foreign policy expert. We're going to talk about the rise of the influencer class in right-wing politics and sort of some fascinating the economies that have been created and dynamics that have been created because of the rise of the influencer class and how it is that they do and don't influence politicians. But before we do that, if you're like me and you're getting to that age where your body just hurts all the time, is that me? I guess so. Then listen up. Don't reach for another painkiller until you learn about this little known turmeric hack for pain and inflammation. You've probably already heard about turmeric being used to fight inflammation and joint pain, but here's the thing. Not all turmeric is created equal. Regular turmeric powder in your pantry might help a little, but a leading pain doctor from Connecticut discovered a special turmeric extract that is 200 times more powerful than what you'd find in standard turmeric. And when he shared this turmeric hack with his patients, the results were shocking. This turmeric extract attacks pain at the source, turning it off like a light switch so that the pain not only goes away, but stays away. Dr. Josh, the brain behind it all, has spent over 20 years helping hundreds of thousands of Americans finally break free from constant aches and stiffness, and his turmeric hack has been the backbone of their success. Say goodbye to expensive surgeries, pain injections, or ineffective over-the-counter medicines and say hello to pain-free living. This is incredible stuff. Once I started taking it regularly, I really noticed a difference. But again, you can't just take any old turmeric. So if you want to learn more about Dr. Josh, his turmeric hack, and the exact method for how to use it in your daily routine, just go to goldenrevive.com/dailyclout. The link is right below this video in the description. Just click and start your journey toward a pain-free, healthier life. Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist, David Reaboi. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
Yeah. So David, you are a foreign policy expert. This is not a subject that I typically bring up on my particular show, but you have been involved in an interesting sort of exchange on Twitter with the influencer crowd. And I really wanted to have you on today to talk about something that I have not talked a lot about, which is the rise of the influencer class in politics. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you who aren't for those out there who are not familiar with you.
Sure. I guess I've been doing this for more than about 20 years now. Um, Professionally. Before it's quite a bit longer. I was just kind of doing it for fun. But what I mean by that is the study of national security and foreign policy, specifically focused, beginning with specifically focused on Sunni Islamist um, political movements and how that bleeds over into counterterrorism.
Mhm.
On one hand, how that bleeds over into information operations and political warfare on the other. So I've written a book about information operations and influence operations run by the Qataris in the United States in 2020, in late 2020. And a lot has changed since then. A lot has changed since then.
A
It's
lot
only
has changed
gotten
just the last few weeks.
right, right. It's only gotten a lot more intense, and that book is kind of due for updating. But this kind of general area has been my area of study and expertise for a very long time. And it's interesting to tie it into your first the first part of your question. It's really interesting seeing people pop up who used to lean on my expertise for 15, 10, 15, 5 years, all of a sudden flip and are now pushing a completely opposite line.
Mhm.
And it's been really frustrating to watch because I know that many of these people really know better.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they really know better. And there are some people that you chalk it up to being on the take. But I think the more significant phenomenon is people we have created on the right. Actually, to be honest with you, I think Elon Musk, more than anyone, has created on the right a an ecosystem that just kind of goes around and around it's a self-contained radicalization process for people, specifically for the right, and it's made people retarded. It just has over the course of the last few years. It's like we've dropped 10 IQ points.
Well, and so,
Um,
the Liberty Lobbyist is a show where we specifically talk about the nuts and bolts of political activism. And I try to give people practical tools to be able to go out and influence, their state and local government. I think that it's far more practical, and people have more tools than they realize to influence their state and local governments. And in the past, I have said that frankly, no one has in their toolbox the ability to influence federal politics really until now. And things have changed. Twitter has changed that dynamic. And so I think I haven't brought it up a ton on my show, because I'm almost horrified by it a bit. And I because of what you said, is it really influencing mm, in a way that actually is achieving the outcomes that those of us on the right have always claimed to espouse? Or has it become something very almost sinister, kind of dirty, and not really outcome based at all? Um, W and I will say that the influencer class, and if you are somebody out there who has no idea what we're really talking about, I mean, God bless, because it's truly a toxic world of social media, but specifically Twitter. Um, but these influencers, they're not actually influential when it comes to the general public. Would you agree with that?
um, I would I would agree with that with an asterisk.
Okay.
So I think that in general, I mean, we just saw, just for example, right? We
Mhm.
just saw the president take action and bomb three Iranian nuclear sites.
Mhm.
And if you would spend your life online, if you'd spend your life on Twitter or glued to the popular podcast, you would think that there's a massive civil war raging within the GOP, within the base of MAGA, whatever that means,
Mhm.
and so forth. And they have been so successful in creating what appears to be some
The
kind of
base.
a controversy
Mhm.
that I mean, I was called by the Washington Post for a comment in a story about the, big GOP divide. And I said,
Mhm.
it's not a divide. It's ridiculous. Look at all the polling,
Yeah.
and there's not one poll that doesn't show 85% plus. There are more people who believe that Elvis is still alive that then Republicans who opposed this, this particular action to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. You wouldn't know that by being online.
Yeah.
And what they've done is they've created on purpose. And look, I mean, I think a lot of this started out as a kind of foreign thing. Um, let's say foreign funded, foreign supported,
So
where
let's just put that out there. I mean, there's a lot of, frankly, there's some evidence to support that a lot of these right wing online influencers are, on the Qatari, gravy train here. Um, is that sort of what you're referring to?
I mean that, but I think that's probably the least of it.
Okay.
So here's how it happens, and this is absolutely not limited to our foreign enemies. This is just
Hmm.
how things work in the
Hmm.
online space, especially on Twitter. So Elon Musk buys Twitter, and everyone is cheering. It's funny. I just, as an aside, I just this afternoon watched a video of the Taliban in Afghanistan talking about how much they love using Twitter now that Elon bought it because they don't have to fear a big ban. They hate Facebook because they said, oh, it's all lies on Facebook, but on Twitter it's great because we get to talk to all our friends.
Wow.
So that's just an
Oh,
aside.
listen, free speech, I guess, is free speech.
Right, right. Which is a kind of ridiculous thing. I mean,
Hmm.
free speech for Americans is one thing,
Hmm.
but then saying, okay, well, we're now going to make our American focused social media network. We're going to introduce tens of millions or more of random foreigners into our politics and into our brains that may or may not be real, may
Right.
or may not be run from like AI.
Right.
Like that's a tremendously insane proposition, and yet Elon Musk did it.
Hmm.
Everyone was cheering when he announced that he fired like whatever 85% of the staff or what it's 50%, some big percentage. Who did he fire? He fired all the security people. He fired all the people that worked to make sure. I'm sure he fired some horrible left wing
Sure.
DEI folks too. HR, yeah, of course, okay, great. But he also fired deliberately a bunch of people who worked to make sure that the platform was not invaded by foreign bots and even domestic bots.
Yeah.
So what is a bot? If you go to my Twitter right now, I just saw it. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. There was a reply to a tweet that I did, and the reply is two bots engaging with one another and talking to one another. How do I know? It's because it uses buzzwords. It doesn't, neither of them speak in like normal syntax.
Yep.
It's like written by AI. It's an AI script, 1000%. Anyone who sees it would just say, okay, that's
Yeah.
not how humans talk, especially on Twitter. And and it popped up within, I don't know, um, 10 minutes, 20 minutes of me posting. And it's like
Yeah.
one after the other after the other. And these are all fake things, and these fake things add up in many different ways, and they influence us in many different ways. So, for example, you can be an influencer pushing, let's say, Qatari propaganda or Iranian propaganda or whatever, and not even know it. How? Because you're pushed in that direction through through the automated behaviors of these bots. So, for example, let's say, I don't know, um, you're just kind of normal person. You don't really care about the Middle East. You don't care about these issues or about Israel or whatever, and then you know, you start to see that your follows are all like they're hating on Jews, they're hating on Israel. There's just
Yep.
nonstop, nonstop. And then you say, you know what? I don't want to fight with these people. I'm not going to talk about it. So it's changed your behavior
Yeah.
because it's made you pull back and say, I don't want to talk about it. On the other hand, you'll have people who are kind of craven and they like money and they know that Elon Musk monetized
Yes.
Twitter.
Yeah.
So, which means that the more you engage with these people, the more engagement you generate, the more money that you have at the end of the month. They'll say, "Oh, well, heck." every time I tweet nasty stuff about the Jews or about Israel, I seem to get a lot of cash.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
it's
this
true.
is
That
what
is,
happens.
yeah, no, it's definitely like that. And, there are a lot of people. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about, sort of the big time influencers. Obviously, these are real people. Whether
Mhm.
they're actually espousing their real positions is another is another thing altogether. But this is a very real thing. Do you believe that? I mean, obviously, I didn't necessarily think that they were that powerful until I saw what occurred with the Trump versus DeSantis primary. And that is when I realized how influential that particular class of people were amongst politicians specifically. Again, not maybe so much amongst the general public, but very, very highly influential with politicians and the media. So, do you think that the Trump administration, and maybe it's just because that has been sort of the reigning Republican administration for the last 10 years during the advent of such an influencer class, do you think that they're sort of uniquely influenced by these people? Ever wonder why your brain feels foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald revealed a direct link between chronic parasitic infections and neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you: ivermectin and membendazole, the gold standard parasite solution, now combined in one cleanse combo designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some of those trendy herbal gimmicks. Fill out a quick intake form and get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today.
For sure.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons.
Mhm.
I mean, there's an innocent reason, which is to say they think that these guys are responsible for their victory. That's,
Sure.
that's a kind of reasonable thing.
Sure.
Um, but on the other hand, I think they all sold many politicians this idea that this is the only way that they can win now, because
Yeah.
this is the media environment that we live in. And they may be right, is the thing. Like, they may be right that what we have constructed on the right, as opposed to what the Democrats have, is a system where, in order to win even a congressional election, what you need to do is you need to be out on Twitter doing X, Y, and Z. And that's why, frankly, it's now part of the toolkit of everyone who
Yeah.
runs for Congress
Yes.
or Senate, or obviously the presidency. But I'm sure there are local mayors, who are doing it, who are putting, 10, $15,000 a month, retainers for social media influencers.
Yeah.
And in the old days, I don't want to say like in my day, but not even that long ago, it wasn't exactly like this. So you would go, the politicians would understand that they needed to have a social media presence, and that they needed to have people out there saying, "Hey, look at whatever." I'll take a guy who's no longer, but hey, look at Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz is doing great. Watch him go to a grocery store and talk to constituents. He's awesome. I love Mike Waltz. Whatever. And it's like, okay, that's level one. That's like,
Yep.
101 level. And then as it developed, it started to get into, you would hire these people to go and attack your opponents
Yeah.
and not declare who you're working for.
Right.
And you're doing that through cutout not 501(c)(3)s, but cutout LLCs, so that you don't have to
Sure.
report anything, which, to my mind, is the most obvious campaign finance violation there ever was. And I think we saw that in spades during the presidential primary the
Yeah.
last time, where people were just obviously making money off of what they
I
were
mean, there were
posting on
scripts.
Twitter.
It was very obvious that there were
Yeah.
scripts that went out, yeah, but the attacking part was another level. I mean, it's very smart when you get down to it. Now, just for the sake of time, I want to move along. So you got into what's become kind of a rather notorious sort of back and forth with the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance.
Oh,
Now, um,
little
I
old me.
what'd you say?
Little old me.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to insult you. You have a very large following, but it is not anywhere near the vice president of the United States following. And typically, when you see people sort of retweeting people, it tends to be people that if a person who has one of the largest followings in right wing politics is retweeting somebody, it's because they are like a Charlie Kirk level or something like that, where the following is so large that they feel that they must respond. Okay. And I'm not trying to insult you. You don't have those kind of numbers. And yet, well, actually, why don't you tell the story? How did it start? What was it all about? And what did JD Vance do?
Um, I don't know. Look, I've always liked JD Vance. I've met him. I know that he's read my work. I've been a big fan of his, and in fact, the only communication that I ever received from Donald Trump was a signed tweet when I asked him to endorse JD Vance for the Senate primary.
Wow.
So I go back with my pro JD Vance credentials go back quite a bit.
Yep.
And I just getting back to the topic, because look, I think unfortunately the vice president seems to be a great example, and maybe some of the folks around him seem to be a great example of how to get caught up in social media, inside the ecosystem, inside the turning wheel of radicalization and whatever. And you can tell by the tone that a lot of people are taking now, just angry and dismissive,
Yeah.
and kind of attacking folks that have always been on side,
Yeah.
which is to me is really weird. I mean, it's one thing if you want to attack the enemy, but what we've been
So
seeing
you've been a
lately
big
is,
supporter of JD Vance's. I've certainly seen a
yeah,
lot of very supportive tweets, but you did
yeah.
suggest that there were leaks coming from his office, and he was obviously very personally offended by this. Otherwise, he would not have responded to you. Why do you think he was so personally offended?
You're putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
I think I'll be honest with you, because we may as well. Um, I I follow this issue pretty closely. And that means that multiple times a day, people are filing stories about the goings on in, this was in the lead up to this was sort of during the negotiations for a possible Iran deal
Yes.
2.0, between the United States and Iran for the nuclear program. And I was watching how multiple times a day we'd be seeing, for months and months, we'd be seeing leaks that were anti-Israel, anti-Netanyahu, leaks about how whatever pro-Israel staffers are being fired, and just kind of very pointed stuff, all from one direction, coming from two outlets. And those two outlets were Politico and Axios. I didn't see them coming on a regular basis from the New York Times or the Washington Post or
Correct.
Rolling Stone or whatever. I saw it coming from those two places. And it's my understanding, or my guess is that me mentioning those two places hit a kind of sore spot.
Because it was probably the truth. And now I found his reply to you when honestly, I mean, really, you were not attacking him, but he really did attack you back. found his response and how he worded it interesting because he felt the need to point out that you were a DeSantis supporter in the primary. Now, what I never noticed from these guys is they never say that somebody was a Haley supporter, right? It's only the DeSantis Trump thing. I'll never quite understand exactly why that was the biggest
Oh, I could
thing.
tell you why.
Okay, all right, tell me.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I think that's easy.
Okay.
It's because it's for the same reason that Donald Trump was the most vicious to Ted Cruz
Mm,
in 2016. It's always sort of, let's say, the person closest to you that you can't afford to lose, to lose support to lose votes to.
mhm.
That's just what it is. There wasn't ever that much danger of a person from who was a Trump supporter going and becoming a Haley supporter, but there definitely was a danger of that with DeSantis in during the primaries
Right.
and really prior to that when DeSantis was leading. And he
Mhm.
was leading, before the primaries began, DeSantis was leading
Right.
with Trump's own voters. And, so that's what created, let's say for them, they understood that phenomenon as a need to completely destroy and salt the earth.
Yeah.
Um,
And they did.
and they did. Yeah,
And they
yeah,
and
and they did.
and it wasn't even and it was a lot of these influencers that we're talking about. Now, I think we can identify that, Trump is the biggest politician in right-wing politics maybe ever. I mean, I think it's quite possible he is. I mean, he was a celebrity before. He is beyond that now. He's probably the most famous person on planet Earth. And he is practically a god in Republican politics at this point because he's now done the impossible twice. And so he has truly a kind of cult like following, and including amongst the influencer class. I have seen them since he has started his second term. They don't ever really criticize major policy decisions by the administration. Sometimes they'll skirt around the edges of an issue, but not a lot of direct attacking of a policy or even like endorsements. I mean, this is a same group of people who claim to hate neocons, and yet they have nada to say about the fact that Donald Trump continuously endorses Lindsey Graham, for instance. I mean, Lindsey Graham has become the person on the right that it's popular to hate amongst this particular class of influencers, and yet they have nothing. They are completely crickets when it comes to Donald Trump endorsing him. That's just an example. And yet the thing that seemed to break this group, this cult-like following, was Israel. And I saw it a bit after October 7th, but Trump wasn't president then, right? But now Israel and the Iran war has broken out during the Trump administration's second term. And there is something, and it honestly scares me. It is something so dark that is going on that it took the Jews, it seems like, to break the cult. What do you have to say? Do you have any
Hmm.
thoughts about that?
I do. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I agree with you about all that. I agree with you that it's very dark. It, I took 2 months off Twitter because I couldn't stand to look at it. And because it seemed like fake. It was negativity, but it was also very, very obviously fake. In many ways, and I guess fake is the nice way of looking at it, right? Like what they want you to believe is they want you to believe it's real, and then that's when you really get psyched out. But the maybe the scarier part is it's fake before it becomes real.
Yeah.
So these things, that's why people run these operations in the social media space. They're always fake before they become real. And and people look around and they see, hey, everybody else is into this, everybody, or they'll see, the numbers that Candace Owens is doing, or Tucker Carlson, or all these people, and they think, hey, um I can,
Create a brand around it.
right, I can create a brand around this. And I just thought it was interesting. A number of friends of mine commented that isn't it weird how if you take any position against Trump, you will be attacked by, the MAGA influencers, except one issue. When it comes to the Jews, you can call him, you can say that Netanyahu controls him and he's bought and paid for, and he just does what Israel wants, and he, X, Y, you can say the most horrible things, but you are not pushed out of MAGA for that.
Yes.
For example, if you were to say, I really think that this TikTok ban is corrupt and horrible, or if you say that, like, yeah, maybe the president should not have taken all this money from the Gulf, or the $400 million jet from the Qataris, they'll come after you.
I'll just
They'll,
even look at the big,
yeah,
beautiful bill. I mean, it's totally fine now and cool to bash on Massey and Chip Roy and Rand Paul for holding out on the big, beautiful bill, right? Those same people have no problem doing that, but now they're holding Massey and Paul up on like this little pedestal because that one because of this one issue. They don't support more funding for Israel. Massey, and I love him, but he's become a little bit almost like pro the other side.
not
Um,
almost.
I'm trying to be nice, but I think APEC like pushed him over the edge. Honestly,
You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So, Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 five-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your experience of transformation today.
he's gone a little
Well, look,
off.
I mean, it's
Well,
APAC, and then seeing his donations explode with Nazis,
no, you're right.
and
You're
he's
right.
thinking like, this is my, and I know, I mean, I have
Bread and
known
butter.
him. We've, texted and talked and had dinner, and you know and I've tried to help him actually on APAC and on aid and all this stuff, because, like, I hate APAC. I
Yeah,
hate APAC for a
same.
completely different reason, but I know what it is. And when he misrepresents it, he gets himself into trouble. And the same thing with aid. And I tell him, look, I've been saying that we should cut aid for years and years. I offered to help. I said, let me show up at your office with people who have written books on cutting off the aid from an Israeli perspective, and you'll be armed with all of these arguments and facts that would enable you to make your case such that nobody can say anything, and whatever. He
100%.
was he wasn't interested, because the way he makes his case now is what makes him money.
Mm, wow.
That's what gets him the
disappointing.
clicks. Yeah.
Going back to my original point, the
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
influencers had no, it's totally fine. The influencers had no trouble supporting Trump bashing Massey over him standing firm on fiscal conservatism.
Right.
Right? But they will hold Massey up as a hero when it comes to Israel. And that is the part that I just find so troubling. And where do you think it's all because they're on the take and from foreign governments, and that's why we're all the anti-Semitism? I mean, obviously, after October 7th, I think we were all a little bit shocked by the amount of anti-Semitism that we saw kind of almost come out of the woodwork, but a lot of it at the time felt like it was coming from the left, right? But now with Trump being in office, since Israel attacked Iran, it feels more and more like it's like this growing thing on the right. Again, I don't think it's necessarily at the moment anyway, to your point, I don't think it's a real big number of people. But the more and more you sit in this, the more it will grow for real. But where do you think the source of the just frankly Jew hatred is coming from on the right when it comes to these issues?
Honestly, I think it's coming from Russia and China.
Okay, so you do think that. Okay.
I think that a lot of this stuff that we see bubbling up online was being ramped up in order for, or sort of, it was being ramped up to address where we were a week ago and 2 weeks ago. It was all about Iran. If you have if you have any situational awareness of what's happening in the world, you knew last year, 2 years ago, whatever, at some point you knew that Israel was going to deal with the Iranian nuclear issue.
Yeah.
It was going to happen. The only question after Donald Trump won was it wasn't even a question, actually, when Donald Trump won. This goes back way further, and we began to see it a little bit bubbling up. And look, I mean, I remember Tucker Carlson had Daryl Cooper on last summer, and many people, smart people, were looking at each other and scratching their heads and saying, this seems like, having a guy go on and talk about how we need to reevaluate World War II and who the heroes and villains are. Maybe Churchill was the villain, maybe Hitler was the hero. Maybe that's not the best thing to do before an election. Maybe that's not going to reflect well on Trump, and nobody can understand it. And I think that if you are Russia and China, Qatar maybe has these thoughts. Maybe they're signing checks, but they're not involved in masterminding social media manipulation, bot farms. But Russia and China do this on the regular. They know how to do this very well. And if you are either Russia or China, it is in your absolute interest to separate the United States from its longtime closest ally in the Middle East, which is the key region. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer, number one. Number two is just the anti-Semitism, fueling anti-Semitism in a country creates destabilizes the country. It just does. It's one of those things. And I feel that that also, I mean, the other thing is that anti-Semitism, people don't just wake up one morning and say, you know what, I hate Jews now. And like, I didn't even know it, but my entire life has been impacted because Jews have made, all these decisions and have been, running a cabal, controlling the world. Yeah. That's not, and that's, I mean, that may happen in the Middle East, but that certainly doesn't happen in the United States. So like, I don't think this is an awakening of like latent anti-Semitism on the part of Americans. I think, frankly, sadly, this is what happens when people get stupid and they no longer know how to evaluate evidence. Partly, this is what happened after COVID, after the 2020 election, after all this stuff. People like Tucker Carlson, when Tucker was out there and he was talking about UFOs, and he was
Yep.
talking about the JFK assassination, and everybody said, I don't get it. Why is this guy talking about this? And I was, screaming and shouting. I'm like, you don't get it. He is very deliberately trying to break the brains of his audience.
Oh,
And
wow. So
the
you don't
conclusion the
think.
conclusion is you cannot trust anything
Hmm.
except what I tell you.
Yep.
And everything is a lie. Everything is a lie except what I tell
What
you.
I tell you. Mm.
And that makes you complete. And if you go through this, and frankly, most people don't know the ins and outs of history of that region or the conflicts or
Sure.
whatever. So you could tell them anything, and they will just say, "Oh, wow, okay, wow, yeah, that's crazy," and they will believe it. And it's no longer they've no. I mean, I've seen this guy Ian Carroll, who was like an Uber driver before,
Yeah, where did he come from? Yeah. Uh-huh.
some intelligence agency taught him how to speak. Clearly, someone did, because he is very good at this. Like they have PhD levels of kind of influence
Of how
operative
to influence the
bearing.
stupid. I mean,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
okay, so you think, because I've thought this many times, does Tucker Carlson believe what he says, or is this all an act? And I sometimes I go back and forth. I think I've settled on it is largely an act, um, except that it's almost broken his brain almost to a degree in itself. Once you
Well,
get
at
into
that point,
it.
does it matter?
Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I
Yeah.
don't know if you know the story. John Ziegler talks about it on a show quite a bit, how he texted Tucker Carlson after Tucker gave that softball interview to Trump during the primary. And he said, like, what do you think you're doing? You didn't even bring up COVID. I mean, there was nothing real there. And Tucker wrote back and said, I'm just a talk show host, man. That was his response. So that's sort of what got me. I'm like, well, I think he knows it's all an act if he thinks he's just a talk show host, man.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that there's something going on here.
Mm,
There are a lot of things that he says that make it quite obvious that he knows what he's doing. I mean, what I said about the conspiracy stuff that he was always
yep,
mainlining.
yep.
Um, and look, I know that a lot of people listening to this will recoil a little bit, and because it's a little bit hard to take. But the truth is that when the left says that conspiracy theories are bad and dangerous, they are right. It's true, they are right. Why? Because the nature of them breaks people's brains. And what does it mean to break your brain? It means to make you ill prepared to see the world around you, and like authentic connections, as opposed to connections that are tangential nonsense that can just be thrown together. Now the way the left dealt with that is a different story, but their kind of initial um their when they come out and they say, conspiracy theories are bad, like, yeah, they're right about that. So what did the right do in response to the left coming out and saying conspiracy theories are bad? The right came out and they said, oh, well, conspiracy theories are great because they're all true. And we've created a situation where everything is level, and there's no
Objective truth.
yeah, right. So now we have a situation where the right was always screaming at the left. You're like, no, you guys are relativists about the truth. There's such a thing as objective truth and facts. And now the right is in the position where it's just thrown that away completely. And
Yeah.
I'm scared for the country. I've never been more scared for the country. I'm more scared for the country now than than I was during COVID, than I was during at any
Wow.
point, because it certainly looks today, we can we can deal with just about anything if we have the tools, if we have the intellectual tools, if we're smart and we're capable. and and we have things that we can cling to and believe in, and we're and we're serious people, we can deal with anything. But when we're not serious people, then we don't have a prayer.
Hmm.
And that's what really kind of frightens me, the most about the time we're living in. And I think that this is kind of being manufactured for us in these online ecosystems in a way that does not exist on the left. They have, I mean, look, they have their own problems. They have their own way of dealing, just because of who is a leftist versus who is someone on the right.
Sure.
There's like different personality dynamics that, they have their whole other set of problems.
Yeah.
But the problems that we have now are really, really bad problems that we
Yeah.
need to start taking seriously. And honestly, I have no idea how we begin to do that with the current state of affairs.
I don't either, but I think that that's a good place to wrap up. I thank you so much for coming on. I hope we didn't depress everybody too much. How could people find you?
You can find me at my, probably easiest is Twitter, which is right there below. Or you can also Google me and find my Substack and my website, and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Have a good day.
You too.
That's it for the Liberty Lobbyist. I am Melissa Blasek. You can find me at Melissa Blasek NH or at Rebuild NH. You can also email me any questions, comments, concerns, director at rebuildnh.com. Until next time.